Coming at you with a solo pod. Haven't done a solo podcast in a really long time, actually. I just checked. The last solo podcast I did was the last week in April. So it's been a minute. And I feel like I start every single solo podcast by saying the same thing, which is basically I love interviewing people, but podcasting is also about putting your voice on display and finding your own voice and sharing stories or insights or thoughts about yourself and what you want to talk about rather than always putting another person on display. And I would say this is a different type of solo episode than I've done in the past because I feel like with all the solo episodes up until this point they've been like very methodical, or like I understood the arc of what I'd be talking about, and because it'd be a lot about personal experiences or personal stories or just like having a good understanding of what my thoughts are on this topic. But when it comes to this episode and this topic on loneliness, it feels like it's just going to be much more raw, and like I'm going to make the caveat of like I don't know what this episode is going to look like, or I don't know like what the full arc of like, oh, like we're going to talk about loneliness and then XYZ and then here's a clear conclusion on that. Like I don't know what that is. And I think that's one of the problems with this entire conversation on loneliness, because I feel like loneliness has become more of a buzzword in a cultural topic rather than actually digging into it and understanding it. And that's not me saying, hey, like everything here is wrong, but I think the more you use words without actually digging into it, you just dilute it. And I think it's become so easy within our culture and society today to just be like, oh yeah, we're lonely. Our culture's lonely. Oh, we have a lonely society. There's a loneliness epidemic. And we kind of just take it at face value and be like, oh, like, yeah, like that's true. Instead of like, hey, like, well, what's actually going on here? And that's where I'm saying at like, I don't know what's going on. And these are just raw thoughts, just like off the cuff. But I thought it was important because I think it's dangerous when you just constantly use language without really parsing it out and understanding it, because we definitely have a less connected society. And I think it's more important to say that instead of loneliness. Like they're definitely, I'm not saying like, hey, like we don't have problems here. Like, no, like there's a massive problem where I think we have a less connected society, and on a personal level you can say, yeah, I feel less connected, but I think that's a lot different than saying I'm lonely. Because like loneliness, it feels like that is just fixed in the ground. It's like it's an identity piece that somebody can hold on to. Whereas if you say like, hey, I'm feeling less connected right now, that's fluid. And this also takes me back to my conversation that I had with Dr. Loretta Bruning on all the chemicals within our brain when it's dopamine, serotonin, oxytocin, and how those all play a role within our happiness. And I remember one of the concluding points from that conversation and from diving deeper into her work in her book was I told her, I was like, oh, like it seems like a better framing that we can use is that we can't be at peak happiness all the time. Like, we can't always have joy. We can't always have a spike of dopamine all the time. Like, it's just not possible. Because if you were to stay at those peak levels all the time, well, then that would just become your baseline, and then you actually wouldn't feel happy. So, like, when your dopamine levels come down, or like you're not at that peak level of happiness, it doesn't mean you're unhappy. It just means, okay, I'm feeling less happiness right now. Like, I'm a few notches down on the happiness ladder, and I'm going to fluctuate between, happiness and just less happiness. And I think it's important to say that as well when it comes to this conversation. Like, I think we need to stop using the word lonely as much and loneliness, and start thinking of it more so of connection, where, oh, I'm feeling really connected right now, or, oh, I'm feeling less connected. And like I said, I think that reframe of language can be really powerful for people. And these are thoughts that I've literally had today coming into this podcast, of like, what should I talk about on this topic? Because I think that when you stay fixated on that word lonely, you almost become more reactionary in a way, where you're not just focused on how you're feeling, but then you're also playing like the societal game in a way of like, oh my gosh, like, is this what loneliness feels like? Oh, loneliness is a big problem right now. Loneliness epidemic. And then there's just this trickling effect. So you got to be really careful. Like, I feel like I'm repeating myself, but I think it's important because it goes to the repetition. Like, if we're just going to keep repeating these words of loneliness epidemic, it's important to take that step back and detach from it. Be like, okay, like, well, why'd you use that word? And let's dig into that conversation as well. And it goes on the other end of the spectrum too. Words like purpose, self-development, personal development, all just buzzwords. And that's something that I thought about recently too. Like, what does it mean that, oh yeah, I'm really invested in my self-development, my personal development? Like, what does that mean? Like, okay, like, you're trying to live a good life. Like, it seems like most people who have any type of motivation or ambition would say, yeah, I'm invested in my self-development. But like, what does that mean? Like, oh, like, I'm really interested in self-development, and the personal development. It's like, well, no, I'm just trying to live my life. And this also brings me back to the conversation that I had with Dr. Dan Siegel on his work with interconnected and going to that self-development. His work on interconnected and understanding of self, and how, especially within our US culture, how we have this illusion of the solo self, where like we just understand selfhood as being like one, like an individual amongst all other individuals. He said that is the root of all of our problems and getting into the loneliness as well. And it's like, that's the type of conversation that we need to be having, where it's like, wow, that is a very in-depth conversation with a lot of intricate moving parts, where it's getting into our psyche of understanding who we are and how we use this language, rather than simply just like, yeah, we're lonely, we have a loneliness epidemic. It's like, no, like, let's have these types of conversations. We're actually not using these words, and we're getting more so into selfhood and our understanding of self. And the reason why I thought that conversation was so fascinating and so important, because I was like, wow, that's definitely something that I've been affected by or impacted by throughout the course of my entire life. Like, I always have seen myself, and have, to a degree, like, taken pride in it, of like, oh, like, me, like Tim Doyle, the one. And that's not coming from like an egotistical or cocky way of like, oh, I'm the one, but more so of just like, I'm my own person. Play your own game. And that's the type of language that I was talking about with Dr. Siegel and also Josh Chuba about, We use this other language that's romanticized, like the 1%, the lone wolf, the alpha, the lion, of just understanding like one among many. And that can be very dangerous. And that's definitely something, and it's not because I had those thoughts naturally or that way of living naturally, but I was definitely conditioned into that. You know, I'm a very driven person. I'm very ambitious. I have a lot of dreams, goals, work that I love to do. And I got in that mindset of like, hey, dude, and definitely still am, that wiring to a large degree of like, hey, go all in on it. Like, go down that path. Like, be that one. Like, see yourself as playing your own game. And this is where I really want to harp on the point of like, I don't know the answers here, because I've seen a lot of benefits and success that has come from that type of mindset. But with these conversations that I'm having, I know and Josh Chuba was saying the same thing of like, hey, I'm a very social person. You know, I love interacting with people, but I'm like conditioned in a way to be alone and like focus on myself. And that's really, really interesting because I feel like I'm the same way as well, where, hey, like I know this is good and I know this is important, but there's also like an intuition and like on an internal level of like, but it feels like I'm not supposed to be doing that because I'm supposed to be in this area over here. And what this area is like focusing on different projects and crafts and work. And it just feels like that's what I'm supposed to be doing. And I think that's what a lot of people struggle with, where it's like, how do I dance this dance, basically? Like where is the balancing act here? And it's tough. But going back to the loneliness as well, and it's especially that word, you know, people like, I've heard it from two people in particular. Chris Williamson. I mean, Chris Williamson emphasizes this a lot, but then I've heard it from Alex Hormozy as well, like the lonely chapter. Like everyone goes through the lonely chapter. And there again, I think that's very dangerous to put that terminology on that, where people can get into the framework of, hey, I'm in my lonely chapter. Like, what does that mean? Like, no, like you're just living your life. Like, stop using that type of terminology and those identifiers, because one, like I was saying, I do think there's some truth to that. Like throughout my life, like the bulk of where my progress has come from has been a lot of alone time, a disgusting amount of alone time, whether that's building myself physically, like my body, whether it's work, especially when it comes to this podcast. It is a ton of alone time, ton of alone time. But I think it's dangerous to get into that romanticized nature of, oh, well, this is my lonely chapter. Like going almost into that, like you're creating a storyline out of it where, oh, like I'm all alone. Like this is what I got to be doing. Or like, like separating yourself from society in a way, but you see it as like a badge of honor and you're kind of just like doing it purposefully. Like that can be very dangerous. And like I said, like I keep saying, there's just so many swirling thoughts and ideas that I have on this. Like there's no real like step by step XYZ of like, hey, here's how this entire conversation on loneliness is going to be. Like, here's where we are, and here's how we improve. Like, I don't know. What I will say though is I do think we have an overuse of words like loneliness and loneliness epidemic. And I think it's much more important, like I was saying earlier, to think more on a spectrum of, hey, we are constantly on a spectrum of connection. We live within connection. We don't live within loneliness. We live within connection. And on one end, we're super connected. And on the other end, we're not connected at all. And we move on that path. So we can go through a season of life where we're really connected. We can go through a season of life where we're not connected at all. And it's like, okay, I need to move within that path. Because the other thing is, you can be in an environment, and I've experienced that as well. You can be within an environment where you are connected, in air quotes, you're around a lot of people all the time, but it feels like a lack of connection in a big way. And the other thing can be true as well. You can be alone. You could be with just one person or two people and feel a deep, 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 deep sense of connection. So there's a lot of nuance there. And it's important to just have the conversations, speak out the thoughts, rather than simply just taking things as fact and, hey, yeah, we're dealing with this. Yeah, we're dealing with this. Well, it's like, no, let's parse that out. What does that actually mean? Like, be curious. Don't just take things at face value. And this isn't me saying like, hey, this is all fake. Like, no, like I was saying, we have a serious lack of connection problem. But I think that's an interesting and more productive way of looking at it. Like I was saying, we have a lack of connection problem. We don't have a loneliness problem. We have a lack of connection. So keep digging, keep being curious, find those connections, keep having conversations. This is a fluid conversation. These things aren't just yes and no, is not. There's a lot of gray matter here. And I think you could probably tell from this conversation, from me talking here, and this is why I prefaced it at the start of, this wasn't a clean arc. This is me just, let me get a ton of different thoughts out here, because that's a good starting point. And then when I listen back, and maybe 6 months from a year from now, and I listen back on this, it's like, oh, okay, I've got a better sense, or there's been some better developments here, or I know how to improve upon this, or have a much more structured arc. But at the end of the day, you also don't always need a structured arc when you're talking. It's just important to talk and use your voice. So with that, keep digging, keep being curious, and keep outworking.